Well, welcome everyone to our webinar this evening. The title is Mythbusters, Learn Which Diabetes Facts Are Actually True. My name is Katie. I'll be your host and I'll introduce our speaker here in just a minute, but thank you so much for joining us. Our format includes a short presentation followed by an interactive discussion. To type in a question, use the question section of the webinar toolbar. At the end, you'll have a chance to ask questions, so we look forward to an interactive webinar. Just a disclaimer, we know that the information you're about to hear may motivate you to make lifestyle changes, but please consult your physician before making any changes to your current routine. This online Q&A session is intended to give general advice only. This information is not a substitute for personal medical advice and involves the professional opinion of the Cecilia Health Certified Diabetes Care and Education Specialists. Our webinar leader this evening is Teresa Grasso. Teresa is a registered dietitian and a certified diabetes care and education specialist. She's been working in the nutrition field for over 20 years and has specialized in diabetes care for the last 10. She resides in New Jersey with her husband and 3 girls. She leads an active life with her family as they are involved in multiple sports and activities. She's passionate about nutrition and leading a healthy lifestyle and enjoys teaching others how to improve their health. So, Teresa, thank you so much for joining us this evening and sharing with us your expertise. And we look forward to listening to what you have to say. So, without further ado, you may take it away.
All right, thanks, Katie. Thanks so much. Thanks everybody for joining. So just a little bit about our discussion this evening. We will be going over some of the common diabetes myths, so probably a lot of things you've heard and hopefully can kind of set some of those myths straight. We'll also look at how are we going to spot a myth. So what is some truth and what is some false things? And then of course we have that question and answer and sharing following our discussion. So feel free, type in that question box whenever you have a question and I will answer those at the end. And just a reminder, please talk with your healthcare provider before making any changes to your diabetes treatment plan. So first up, we have our first diabetes myth and truths. So is this a myth or a truth? All diabetes pills are not safe. Okay, so this is definitely a myth and it's a rumor. Diabetes medications go through extensive testing before they are FDA approved. It's important to know that certain medications maybe aren't taken by certain people. So, you know, there's certain medications that, let's say somebody maybe has a kidney issue along with diabetes. So there may be a medication that's not good for them. So you might hear them say, oh, I can't take that medication, or that medication's no good. And it might be not good for them and what their health concerns are, but it certainly could be safe for you. So you need to just speak with your doctor if any concerns come up. And according to the FDA, most side effects are not serious. So some medications you may see, they may say a side effect of, you know, nausea or upset stomach. And a lot of times medications, maybe you have that side effect when you're first starting them. They could be, you know, they're new to you. And a lot of times those kind of concerns will resolve. But again, any concerns, always bring them to your doctor. And if a medication was bothering you and it's causing you some kind of distress, you always want to speak to your doctor because everybody's body is different. And if something's not agreeing with you, it may be better to change the medication and get something that you're able to take and it doesn't cause you some side effects. So you just want to make sure you have that open communication with your doctor, call them, let them know any side effects, any concerns, And if those aren't resolving, then it might be a case to change those medications. There's also sometimes recalls on medications. So that's another thing to discuss with your pharmacist or your doctor. Because sometimes when there's a recall, it's not an overall recall on all the medication. Sometimes it's like a certain generic or a certain form of the medication, or maybe the recall is at a certain plant that was making that medication. So a lot of times we may hear things like that in the news, or our friends are telling us. But again, always important to go to that professional, go to your pharmacist, and see, is that medication you're on recalled? And they would be able to let you know that. Okay, our next myth or truth: taking diabetes medications means you failed at diabetes. So this is certainly a myth. Diabetes is a progressive disease. So as time goes on, our bodies will produce less insulin. So there's times that maybe our medication needs to change. Over time, maybe what was working for us at one point is no longer working. It's no longer keeping our blood sugars in a good range. So most people will eventually need medication for blood sugar control. So you may start out with diet and exercise and not be on medication, and that could work for extensive amount of time. And there may come a time that those blood sugars start to creep up. And it's not necessarily anything you did wrong. Like we said, our bodies are producing less insulin. We need insulin to get that sugar out of our blood and bring it to our cells. So then our body uses that sugar for energy. So over time, if we're producing less insulin, we may need some medication to kind of help that process out in our body. Our pancreas may not be able to keep up with our body's needs for the insulin. So by no means, if you end up on medication or if you end up on insulin, it does not mean that you failed. You could be doing everything right. You could be eating healthy, you could be exercising, you can be taking your medication as you're supposed to, but changes in our body may require us to take different medications or to add something in. So we always want to look at our diabetes care as, diet, exercise, and our medication working together if we need it, because the goal is always to keep our blood sugar under good control, to keep our body healthy. If blood sugars are high and we're not maintaining those blood sugars with the regimen that we're on, we may need to introduce something else. We may need to introduce a new medication, because the goal is always that we want to keep those blood sugars in good control and reduce the complications from diabetes. So this just gives a little graph of how those diabetes changes can occur over time. So if you can see in the normal level, there's insulin resistance, our blood sugar numbers, and our insulin production. So that insulin production can keep up, right? It can keep up with the blood sugar numbers. In the pre-diabetes, the blood sugar numbers are creeping up, we have a little more insulin resistance, and we have less insulin production. So we'll see those blood sugars running a little higher. And then in type 2 diabetes, you can see there's even a little less of that insulin production, more insulin resistance, and those blood sugars creeping up. Okay, so the next myth or truth: diabetes medications will cause me to go blind. Okay, so this is certainly a myth, and we know that diabetes can affect our vision, can affect our eyes. So again, another important thing that we always talk about is keeping up our eye care, right? Keeping those appointments with our eye doctor, getting our eyes dilated so we're checking behind our eyes, we're checking the blood vessels behind our eyes, because diabetes can affect our eyes. Again, keeping blood sugars under good control is going to cause less of those complications, one being less eye problems. So your diabetes medications, as I mentioned before, they're working to help keep your blood sugar numbers down, keep your blood sugar numbers under control. So they're not going to cause blindness. So that is certainly a myth. What we want to make sure we're doing is managing our blood sugars, keeping them under good control. Sometimes if we are not starting medications and we're not going to the doctor and there's been, some time in between doctor's appointments and our blood sugar has gone up because we have not been doing what we're supposed to do, that would be a time that if the blood sugar is high, it can start affecting our vision. So, keeping up with those appointments and taking your medication as prescribed to your keep your blood sugars under good control is going to prevent any kind of vision issues. All right, our next myth or truth: I can stop taking my medication when my blood sugar is normal. Okay. So this is a myth. Sometimes we might feel great, right? We're feeling good, we're doing great. We think, okay, I got this. I don't need these medications anymore. But we want to remember that triangle, right? That triangle is going to include our diet, our exercise, and oftentimes the third point of that triangle is the medication. So it's all three of those working together to keep the blood sugar under control. So if we take out the medication, we might see those blood sugars start going up. So again, this is something you would speak to your doctor about. If your blood sugar is getting under really great control and you get your A1C numbers back and they look really good, it might be a discussion with the doctor, you working together with your diabetes management team to see, can medications be changed? Can they be reduced? Because now I've been watching my diet closely. I've been exercising. I lost some weight. My blood sugar numbers, my A1C are really good. There might be a case where some things can be reduced, but you would never stop those on your own. You'd want to discuss that with your healthcare team, and they're going to always look closely at your labs and what else is going on, what other conditions you may have and other health concerns, and together you will decide if any medication changes would benefit you or would be okay to do. All right. This is always my favorites, being a dietitian. Carrots and beets are high in sugar and should be avoided by people with diabetes. So this is a myth. A lot of times we hear certain foods are bad for you because they have too many carbohydrates, or we may hear things like this: carrots and beets are, taste sweet, they have more carbs in them. So when we talk about what we're eating, we know that the carbohydrates are the foods that affect our blood sugar. We're not taking those foods out of our diet, we're watching how much we eat of them, because very basic principles: if we eat too many carbohydrates, our blood sugar can go up. If we're watching our portions, that better chance that our blood sugars are going to be more stable. So vegetables that are non-starchy vegetables, they have very little carbohydrates, so they're really not going to affect our blood sugars unless we were eating large quantities of them. Starchy vegetables can affect our blood sugar. So starchy ones are things like corn, peas, potatoes. Those vegetables, we kind of push them over to our carbohydrate group because they're starchier, and in the body they will react just like any other carbohydrate. So those we have to watch our portions of closer. So if you look at that chart there, for example, like half a cup of corn, peas, potatoes, half a cup of those is 15 grams of carbohydrate. So if you're carbohydrate counting, you would know that that 15 grams is one carbohydrate choice. So you could see if I ate half a cup of corn, I'd be getting 15 grams of carbohydrate. If I ate a cup of corn, I'm going to double that, right? I'd be getting 30 grams of carbohydrate. So those wouldn't be a vegetable that I could say, I'm going to eat as much as I want of them because of that carb, because they do have a higher carb content. If you look at what we just mentioned, the carrots and the beets, about 10 baby carrots or half a cup of beets is only 8 grams of carbohydrate. So just about half of what the corn, the peas, and the potato are. So, you can eat those and you're not getting a lot of carbohydrates. If you ate large amounts of them, then you'd want to count it. Then you'd want to say, okay, I just ate a cup of beets, which probably, most of the time something like the beets, maybe you're putting a few slices on a salad, something like that. So you kind of just gauge your portion size is the biggest thing we want to focus on, right? The portions we're eating. If we talk about other vegetables, salads, broccoli, green beans, pepper, zucchini, those are all going to be very low in carbs. So those are the ones that when we say, okay, when I sit down to eat, I want to follow that food plate where I fill half of my plate with vegetables. Those are the vegetables we're talking about, right? Those non-starchy ones, those low carb ones. And then I'd round out my plate with quarter of it being those starchy foods, those grains, those carbohydrates. So maybe that's where I have my small portion of my potato or my corn. And then the other quarter of my plate would be my lean protein, my chicken, my fish, my lean meat. So that's always a great visual, that food plate. All right, moving on to our next, our fruits. So kind of the same principles we were just talking about, but people with diabetes should not eat fruit because it contains too much sugar. Okay, so most of us know that this is a myth. Fruit is very healthy for us. It's a whole food. It has fiber, it has vitamins, it has nutrients, it has antioxidants. So we want to include fruit in our diet. Does fruit have carbohydrates? Yes. So carbohydrates are natural sugar. Can fruit affect our blood sugar? Yes. So again, we want to enjoy fruit for all its health benefits, but we're going to watch our portions of it. We can't have, a huge bowl of a fruit salad or eat, 2-3 pieces of fruit at one time, because then we'd be getting a lot of carbs at once. A lot of carbs at once raises our blood sugar. If we spread our fruit out throughout the day, we can certainly include it in our diet and keep our blood sugars under control. So we might have a fruit for a snack, an apple with some nuts. Maybe we have, if a fruit is large, like a banana or a mango, we probably hear that. Bananas have a lot of sugar in them, but they're larger than a lot of other fruits. So a serving of a large fruit like that banana would be half a banana. So half a banana would count as a serving. So if we're eating that, maybe we just do half instead of the whole banana, and we'll see that our blood sugars are okay. So it's more about the portion sizes and, include them for sure, but spread them out throughout the day. Okay. People with diabetes should only eat diabetic food. Okay, so I do hear this a lot. I hear people say like, oh, I couldn't find something that was sugar free, but it's a myth, right? You do not need a special type of food because you have diabetes. It's always going to be more about the portions, and it's always going to be, what we're eating, how much are we eating of it, how are we balancing out our meals. So, kind of see that picture there, but we don't want to have like a plate full of pasta and that's the only food on our plate, because then we're going to tend to eat too much, right? We want to balance our plate. So if we have that pasta, maybe we do half the plate some broccoli, quarter of the plate our pasta, then maybe we have, some protein, some shrimp or something like that. And that would be perfectly fine. We want to look at some of the foods. We have to look at the label, right? If a food says sugar free, it doesn't always mean it doesn't have carbs. So, an example of that would be something like sugar-free ice cream. So we look at that and we say, oh, it's sugar-free. I can have this. I can have as much as I want. But that's not going to be the case because ice cream is made with milk, right? And milk has carbohydrates. Milk naturally has carbohydrates in it. So if you look at the label, the front of the container may say it's sugar-free. Then when you look at the label where it says serving size, always look at the serving size. Ice cream, it'll tend to say half a cup. And then you'd want to look where it says total carbohydrates. So even if it says 0 next to that sugar would be under the total carbohydrates on a food label. So even if it says sugar, because they didn't add sugar to this ice cream is still going to have carbohydrates because it's still going to have the natural carbs from the milk. So you can kind of choose. If you enjoy that sugar-free ice cream, that's fine, but you would still have to watch your portions. You're still going to have to watch your portions because you still would be consuming carbohydrates. And so it's not like a free food just because it says sugar-free. Okay. If you chose to buy a regular ice cream as a treat. So again, I'm just using this as an example. Again, you'd still have to watch your portions, right? You're going to look at the total carbs on that and probably have to keep it to that one serving, that half a cup, so a small portion. So just kind of something to think about, whole regular foods are fine. It's going to be looking at those portions. Now, of course, things like soda, candy, cakes, things like that, of course, are going to have more carbs. They have more sugar in them. And we're trying to not include those in our diet. So we'd want to stay away from especially beverages like sodas and juices and juice drinks because they're going to have a lot of carbs in them and no nutrition. We don't want to eat cakes and cookies every day either because that's not healthy for us. And those are going to be higher in sugar, which makes them higher in carbs, which will raise your blood sugar. But if it's a birthday or a celebration and you want to enjoy a little piece of cake or a little treat, you certainly can do that. You're going to look at your portion size, right? How much am I eating? What else am I eating with this meal? And if that's something you want to include for a special celebration, you can definitely do that. All right. So we talked about a lot of those myths, but what are some signs of misinformation? So if you find things that have lists of this is good for you and this is bad for you. So this is a list of good foods for people with diabetes and this is a list of bad foods. You want to look at that with caution, right? So again, if things like soda and juice drinks and things like that are on the bad list, yes, we don't want to include a lot of those. But if you see some of these whole natural foods like fruits and certain grains and bread, those are not bad, right? We want to make sure, again, we're looking at those portions. And we don't really want to think of food as good and bad, right? We want to have a healthy relationship with food and, be able to eat the things that we like, but we're going to look at how much we're eating of them. Okay. You want to be careful of things that might promise to cure diabetes, like, some herb or supplements. A lot of times those are marketing ploys and they want you to spend money on them. Unknown websites. So always go to secure websites that are going to give you sound information. So our website is always a good one at Cecilia Health. We have lots of great information on there, lots of blogs and links to safe sites that you can find information for sure. But things like the American Diabetes Association is a great place to start if you're looking for recipes or you just want to read up on, different topics. Whether it's something on your medication or exercise or nutrition, the American Diabetes Association is a great website to start with. If you see a claim that sounds too good to be true, eat this and it's going to help improve your blood sugar. That's a caution, right? There's no one thing that we're going to eat that's going to make our blood sugar good. Recommendations based on a single study. Sometimes it'll say like, oh, two people did this and their blood sugar went down. That's not really a sound study. So, be careful of things you're reading. And of course, anything that promises a quick fix, So unfortunately, with most things, there isn't a quick fix, right? We got to put in some of the work. We got to educate ourselves. We have to, maybe fail sometimes, fail a little bit so we can see what will work for us. But there's not going to be a quick fix. All right. So just in summary, our medications are going to keep us healthy, right? They're going to help control our blood sugars. So if it's something the doctor prescribed, you're going to take that medication as prescribed. You're going to work with your healthcare provider in just keeping those three things I mentioned. So if you have that triangle, you have your diet, your exercise, and your medication. The three of those working together are going to help with controlling your blood sugar. So just take your medication as prescribed. Any side effects, any issues, anything that's not working for you, have open communication with your doctor, your healthcare provider. If a medication is bothering you and you're not taking it, you want to let the doctor know that. There's a lot of different medications out there, and they'll be able to hopefully switch you to something else, because the idea is that you don't take a medication and it makes you feel worse. You want to take a medication so you feel better, so your diabetes is better controlled and you feel better. So if there's any indication that something's not working for you, have that open communication with your doctor. Know that all or most foods can fit into your meal plan. If you need assistance, talk to your health coach here at, Cecilia Health. See if your insurance lets you meet with like one-on-one with a dietitian or a certified diabetes educator if you want a little more information. Look in your area, your senior centers, your hospitals. A lot of them have classes. They have diabetes classes or just little like maybe lectures, lunch and learn. Some places do those. These webinars are always a great place to learn information. If you go to our website, we also have a library of our presentation. So if you have time, you can always listen to some of those if there's another topic that you're interested in. And like I said, American Diabetes Association is also a really great resource, and you might even find some things on there where they have different information and groups you can learn more from. Okay, so anything that comes up where you're like, I don't know if this is true, I heard this, my friend told me this, and it just doesn't sound right, again, talk to your diabetes team, talk to your healthcare provider, and just, run it through with them. And they'll be able to tell you, nope, that's, not something that you should do, or, they may be able to give you more education on whatever it is that you're questioning. All right, so at this point, we do have time for some questions. So I hope I answered a lot of your questions and you were able to get some good information, but use that question tab to see, to jot down any questions you might have, and I can answer them. And if anybody has any questions that just came up, feel free to type those in and I will see them. All right. So one of the questions has to do with, like we were talking about, the fruits and the portions. So there's certain fruits that this person is avoiding because they heard they're high in sugar. So one of them being grapes. So that is one that will often come up. Sometimes when things taste sweet, we think they have more sugar. So maybe they're a little more concentrated in sugar. So again, it's the portions, right? Like grapes are something that's easy if you sit there with a bunch of grapes and you're not paying attention. You're eating one after another. Before you know it, maybe you ate half of the bunch. So by doing that, we're ending up getting a large amount of carbohydrates. So a serving of grapes is about 15 small grapes, or if what would fit in a half a cup is a good kind of visual. So the portions are what's important. Sometimes it's also good to pair fruit with a little bit of protein, because fruit is one of our only foods that is all carbohydrates. Like there's nothing else with it. It doesn't have protein in it. It doesn't have, um, so sometimes pairing it with some protein. So maybe I do those grapes with an ounce of low fat cheese. So now I'm getting a little protein, and that might help that my blood sugars don't spike up. Um, the other thing with fruit is sometimes if it's sitting, it gets riper and a little more concentrated in the sugar. So things like melon, like watermelon, a carb serving or what has 15 grams is a pretty big portion. It's 1.25 cups. But if that melon is sitting and it gets really ripe, it gets a little more concentrated in sugar. So sometimes people say like, oh, the watermelon like really raised my blood sugar. So that's where you kind of can do a little trial and error sometimes, because you have to see what works for you. And everybody's body like reacts a little different at times. So maybe you have to do a smaller portion. Maybe say like, oh, when I ate, a cup and a half, a cup and a quarter of watermelon, my blood sugar 2 hours after was a little higher than the 180. So 2 hours after we eat, we want our blood sugar to be no higher than 180. So then maybe next time you have the watermelon, you try to do like 3/4 of a cup and see if that portion was better for you. Or pair it with some protein. Maybe a 1/4 cup of nuts is a good way to get some protein in. And maybe that helps that blood sugar stay a little more stable. So, just thinking of, again, the portion size is what's important. Um, okay. And then another question was on exercise and how that helps in this piece of lowering the blood sugar. So what exercise does is it helps insulin do its job. So you can kind of think of exercise as helping that insulin. So when we eat, our body releases insulin, and insulin's job is to get that sugar out of our blood and bring it to our cells. So that's bringing that sugar to our cells is where our body then uses that for energy. When the insulin is not working as well, or maybe we're not producing as much as we need to, then that sugar is kind of hanging around in our blood a little too long, and that's where we may see that rise in the blood sugar. But what exercise does is it helps the insulin do its job. So what it does is it helps that insulin get the sugar and bring it to our cells. So things like walking is a really great exercise to do, or whatever exercises you enjoy. Ideally trying to get about 30 minutes a day, or about 150 minutes of exercise a week is ideal. It doesn't have to be, 30 minutes at once. You can do, 10 minutes, 15 minutes at a time, and build your way up. So you're getting like 30 minutes in a day. But, getting that exercise is definitely part of the diabetes puzzle, right? So getting some movement in can help keep your blood sugars down. If you're not able to do walking, chair exercises are always good too. There's a really great program called Sit and Be Fit. It's on the PBS channel, or you can go on YouTube and get that. But movement, right? Whatever movement you can get throughout the day, that is going to help. That exercise piece will help your blood sugars. Okay. All right, and I did want to let you know of our upcoming live events. So if you're interested in attending any of these, you can let your diabetes coach know, and they can send it to you. Once you joined in today, though, you have access to our live events. So, you can go to our website, you can go to the email you got or any of the emails and be able to connect to our website and see upcoming live events, and also past ones if you wanted to listen into any of those. So we do have one next month, July 11th at 6 p.m. And that is diabetes and your diet, taking it to the next level. So that'll be a great one, learning a little bit more about our diet. And, I know I say the word portions a lot, but super important to know what the portions are. So that will go into that a little bit more. And then the one after that is August 22nd, and that one is also at 6 p.m. And that is our blood sugar boot camp. So that one is the ins and outs of blood sugar testing. So always a great one too, knowing what those numbers should be, testing, and the ins and outs with that. We also, I wanted to give you some of our additional Cecilia Health resources. We have our Facebook group, Diabetes Innovation. We also have our Cecilia Health blog. So there's, several blogs put out each month on some really great topics. So again, if you go to our website, ceciliahealth.com, you can, click on the blog link and you'll be able to get some great information from that too. Okay, so thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your attendance, your participation. If you have any questions that you weren't able to ask while you were on this evening, definitely ask your health coach on your next call. Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.